Alright everyone, we start off today talking about Michaelmoore's rant the other day. He went on Maher, of course, one of the more sane liberals, but still somehow willing to have Michaelmoore aboard. We're all going to die because of climate change. Just ignore my 14-bedroom mansion and my limo and sports cars and other things. Yes, I'm a salt of the earth, man of the people, says Michaelmoore. I was raised in the working class, but I've got mine now, so I've grown older and wiser. I think there are protest songs by anarcho-communists about that particular line. Link in the description, archived of course. You can see it for yourself. Michaelmoore in all of his glory rambling on this issue. His prediction for the midterms is that there's an invisible empire of blue voters. Terminology definitely apt when we describe Democrats, by the way. He goes full Karl Rove. He claims that the Democrats, in his opinion, are going to maintain the House. To be clear, the GOP needs a net pickup of 5 seats in order to clear the House and control it by a seat. It's a very, very underwhelming advantage that the Dems had to begin with there, to the point where if the progressives, so-called, the commie caucus, decides to block something, they have to get a bunch of neocons to vote for them. The problem being a lot of those neocons have been primaried out by MAGA candidates, many of which are slated to win, and the progressive, commie caucus isn't really growing, it seems, at this point. They seem to have achieved their maximum effect, which is causing some misery within the Democratic Party. So I'll go through the reasons why that particular prediction is dead wrong. Secondly, that the Dems will take the Senate. That is, right now you have a 50-50 split. It's certainly not a filibuster-proof majority. You don't even have the votes to get rid of the Senate filibuster, which is good. And even if the Dems took the Senate by a seat, they still wouldn't be capable of doing so, just to be clear. It's possible that the Democrats will grow their Senate lead. I don't think that it's likely, though. Entirely ignored are gubernatorial races. Notice how he doesn't talk about that. It's because there are so many Democrats that are so vulnerable within incumbent positions and so many Republicans that they spent months fantasizing about knocking off out of gubernatorial slots that really have solidified their lead. Greg Abbott is one of them. There's effectively no chance that Little Beto is going to knock Greg Abbott off. DeSantis, they're frenetic over DeSantis. Christ has, if anything, lost some support in the last month or so. The Martha's Vineyard thing doesn't appear to have played any role in DeSantis' support there. And there are others as well. Kari Lake might be an underdog right now for the Arizona Senate slot. That could, number one, change. And number two, if there is an underestimation of support for either party, you would expect it to be in the GOP's favor, not the Dems' favor. I'll analyze that further. You've got the Georgia gubernatorial race. Stacey Abrams has led in literally not a single poll. Moore deftly avoids this. He also avoided being very direct when queried with regards to whether Biden should run in 2024. He's like, well, he's done a good job. He's done great things. But, I don't know. Maybe we'll wait and see. I'm skeptical. Maybe we need some younger blood in there, etc., etc. Yeah, this great guy, but I don't want him to run again, basically. He's mincing his words because he wants to be invited to the White House a couple more times over the next few years. Here's the problem. Let's look at the House specifically. Senate, it is a 50-50 proposition. I think now it leans towards the GOP picking up a seat or two. Based on the polling metrics that I've seen, the general expectation in late movement in the polls, potentially, you've got to understand we will be getting new economic data for October before the election, and it looks like the bottom is beginning to drop out already. If things get slamma-jammed backwards, gas prices have now stagnated or begun to rise, inflation is not really going down, the Fed's actions risk stagflation, new jobless claims are rising. If that part of the economy, joblessness and inflation, gets hammered, there's no chance of the Democrats, in my opinion, pulling off a win in the midterms. For them, a win is effectively keeping the Senate, and that's it, in my opinion. The problem with the House races, and the House is very important, outsizedly when you're talking about budgetary situations specifically, and Nancy Pelosi's pride, of course, is that if you look at the toss-up races, The GOP can take the House by a few seats without winning any of them. They don't need a single toss-up seat. Those that lean red or are solid red comprise enough seats already, many of which are old Dem incumbent positions that the Republicans are handily ahead in. And if you look at RCP, that's what you should do. Look at the number of seats where the Democrats were incumbent and or had held the seat that the GOP is slated to probably pick up because they lean towards the GOP. And now look at the number of seats that the GOP is ceding to the Democrats, assuming that you assume that most of those races go in the predictable direction. It's like 4-1. And there's your pickups. There's why the GOP has such a major advantage. Because even if you don't consider the roughly 30 toss-up races, the GOP would still take the House of Representatives. My belief is that if you have a 1-point swing in the GOP's favor, and it could be double-digit swings of support. We've seen this before in midterm elections. The polling on a national level can be kind of spotty with midterm elections, more so than with general elections in on years where you've got a presidential race. More people vote. You have higher Dem turnout, particularly. Youth vote turns out more in those elections. There's more eyes on the things that are going on and more polls conducted. A polling firm might be doing a presidential poll, then they'll do a bunch of down ballot shit as well. You're not getting that in a midterm election. You have fewer data points. It would be, in my opinion, very odd if there were a swing towards the Democrats. The problem for Michaelmoore's prediction here is that even if there were a swing by a couple points towards the Democrats, the Republicans would still be holding virtually all of the seats that they needed for a majority even before any of the toss-ups were counted. They could win 1 in 4 of the toss-up seats there, just a quarter of them, and still end up with a slim House majority. Now, of course, that polling swing would also throw the Senate to the Democrats. To be clear, he would be correct in that analysis. There's no historical reason to believe that's going to be the case. When we look at voter registration data, when we look, I believe, at enthusiasm and what the issues are making people enthusiastic about, it would be advantage GOP. Because what is it? Number 1, it's inflation. Number 2, jobs in the economy in general. Number 3, gas prices. They have come down from their long-term peak. The problem is that the strategic reserves can only be redrained for so long. You have more intrigue happening now in Eastern Europe and with Russia, with Nord Stream 1 being shut off, etc. I can't imagine that those prices are going to be falling much further. If anything, I think they'll begin inching upwards again. If they begin rising again before Election Day, the gas tax holiday will be phased out at some point. Biden will probably punt that one. That's giving you a little bit of relief. If the gas prices rise anyway, and if inflation begins to tick upwards, and it could, technically it's already still rising, but people don't understand year-over-year metrics the same way they do month-over-month comparisons. And so most people, they don't know anything about basic economics, so they're not really analyzing inflation properly anyway. The legacy media promulgates this fact. Because all of the main issues are economic or they're related to the border and crime, they're not related to Roe v. Wade, they're not related to climate change, they're not related to issues on which the Democrats at least claim to have superiority on, and because they failed to capitalize on those issues, I've got no reason to believe that there's going to be some late surge for the Democrats or some major differential. If anything, I think that the polls, in the end, will show that the Republicans outperform. Any outperformance gives them the House. Any significant outperformance, more than a point, gives them the Senate. They probably pick up a couple gubernatorial slots regardless. I don't know what metrics Michaelmoore is going with, and I feel that he's just going full Karl Rove. You'll remember his meltdown in the 2012 election when he had predicted for months based on his unskewed polling, based partially on turnout analysis, etc., rage against Obama and his particular machine in favor of the Romney machine. He was so livid on election night when Ohio was called for Barack Obama that live on Fox News, he started getting red in the face and going crazy and bellowing and stormed off backstage to confront random staffers about why it was called for Barack Obama. Romney, my polls show that Romney should be leading there somewhat. Give him a chance, uncall the race, and we're just doing our job. I think Michaelmoore is in denial, and I think that he's doing the same thing. Time will tell, I suppose, and of course, you've still got 6 more weeks for there to be some sea change in the atmosphere of politics that could throw things 5 points in the Dems' favor. You could have some major goddamn Republican scandal, and I don't mean a nothing burger that nobody without partisan leanings cares about, like a real one or something like, oh, here, we got here's some congressional group of House members, and they were all perving on female constituents or something like that. That could hurt. But I don't know that you're going to get... I mean, if the Democrats are waiting for an October surprise to save them, that's basically a Hail Mary at that point. That's about all. Peace out.